Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at a company called Krishana Phoschem Ltd.
Okay.
They're an Indian company, and they manufacture and market fertilizers.
Interesting.
And they've actually been listed on the National Stock Exchange of India since 2017. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they've been around for a little while.
Yeah.
They're part of the Ostwald Group of Industries, which is even bigger.
I was going to say, yeah, the Oswald Group is huge. They're kind of like they've got their hands in everything.
Yeah, so they handle like raw materials to finished fertilizers.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
So we're going to be looking at their Q3 FY25 financials and investor presentation that they released.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're going to try to understand, how they're performing, their game plan, and maybe even see what we can see about the future of the fertilizer industry.
Yeah, always trying to look forward.
Exactly. And right away, the numbers are pretty eye-catching.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
So they had a record-breaking quarter. They announced their highest ever quarterly sales, and their profitability is way up.
Okay, well, that's always good to hear.
Yeah, so the revenue jumped by over 32% compared to last year.
Wow.
And they reached a massive onward 304 crore.
That's a lot of core.
That is a lot of crore. And so it's not just about, sales and revenue.
That's right.
Their EBITDA is also up.
Now, remind me, what is that again?
EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Oh, okay, right.
So it gives you a picture of their core operating profitability.
Makes sense.
And that grew by 88.5% year over year to reach 44.3 crore.
So they're running a tight ship.
Yeah, and then even more impressive is their PT, that's it after tax.
Oh, right.
That grew by 454.1% year over year.
Wow.
Hitting 20.5 crore.
So they're really turning a profit.
They're not just selling more, they're becoming more efficient, more profitable.
That's great.
And that's, for anyone thinking about investing in the company, that's a really good sign.
What would you say this kind of growth means for their future?
I think it's a strong indicator that they're in good shape and that they have potential for solid returns down the line.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So let's dig deeper into what's driving this success.
Okay, yeah, let's see what's going on.
So one of the things that seems to be working for them is their NPK fertilizer.
NPK.
Yeah, that stands for nitrogen,
How fun.
phosphorus, and potassium.
Okay, the essential ingredients for plants.
Exactly. It's like plant vitamins.
Yeah.
So their NPK sales volume hit an all-time high this quarter.
Really?
57,864 tons.
Okay.
And that's a 205.3% increase from the same time last year.
Okay, so clearly there's a demand for that.
Yeah, what do you think that is?
Well, there are a couple factors, probably.
Okay.
First, you've got the strong demand for phosphatic fertilizers
Okay.
during India's Rabi season.
Rabi season.
Yeah, it's their winter cropping season.
Okay, right.
So industry-wide, the demand jumped over 50% year over year during Q3. So it seems like Krishana Phoschem is really taking advantage of that seasonal demand.
They're riding that wave.
Exactly. And the NPK product is perfect for that.
Yeah, so understanding those seasonal trends is so important.
For sure, it can really inform your investment decisions.
Yeah, and that, it's not just about selling more, they're also producing more.
Right.
So their production numbers are really impressive.
Like what kind of numbers are we talking?
So 100% capacity utilization for their single superphosphate or SSP plants.
Wow.
And 79% for their DAP-NPK plants in Q3.
That's incredible. So they're really maximizing their output.
Yeah, and that tells us that they're really efficient.
Yeah.
And that they're making good strategic decisions to meet this demand.
So they really seem to have a handle on what the market needs.
Absolutely. And speaking of strategy, their investor presentation highlighted a couple things about how they're planning to grow.
Oh, yeah. What do they say?
So they are really big on acquisitions.
Okay.
And particularly turning around companies that are losing money.
So kind of like a fixer-upper strategy.
Yeah, exactly. They can spot that hidden potential.
Yeah, that's a good skill to have.
Yeah. So they also emphasize something called backward integration.
Now, what is that?
So backward integration is basically controlling more stages of their supply chain.
Okay.
So for Krishana Phoschem, that means they're able to convert low-grade rock phosphate into high-grade material.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So they have more control over their raw material supply.
And costs, right?
And costs. Yeah, exactly. Which is a big advantage in a market where prices can be unpredictable.
Yeah, you don't want to be at the mercy of the market.
Exactly. And they've also locked in raw material supplies through long-term agreements.
That's smart.
Yeah, and they've got their plants strategically located near resource mines and key markets.
So minimizing those costs.
Minimizing costs, maximizing efficiency.
That's the name of the game.
And it all seems to be paying off. Their operating expenses are low.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Their capital expenditures are low.
Which means more profit.
More profit. Yeah. Strong return on capital employed.
They're doing a lot of things right.
Yeah. And we should also mention that they're not just any player in this market.
Right.
They're actually the second largest single superphosphate manufacturing group in India.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and they have a large market share in states like Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh.
So they've got a strong presence in some key areas.
Yeah, so that begs the question, what do you think about their market position and their future prospects?
Well, India's fertilizer industry is huge, and it's only getting bigger.
That's true.
With the rising population and, everyone needing food security companies like Krishana Phoschem are in a really good spot to capitalize on that growth.
Okay, so we've talked about all the good stuff, but we should also look at the less glamorous stuff.
Yeah, there's always another side to the coin.
The things that might be a little riskier.
Right.
So one of those is government subsidies.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Subsidies can be tricky.
Yeah, so their report shows a subsidy receivable of about 93.5 crore as of December 31st, 2024.
Okay.
Which is actually down slightly from the previous quarter.
Interesting. So how do those subsidies impact their financials overall?
Well, government subsidies are a big part of the Indian fertilizer industry.
Yeah, for sure.
It impacts not just the company's financials, but also how affordable fertilizers are for farmers.
Makes sense.
So the fact that their subsidy receivable has decreased a little bit is something to watch.
Yeah, keep an eye on it.
It could be temporary, but, it's something to note.
Definitely.
And, speaking of interesting things, the investor presentation introduces us to the people behind the company.
Oh, yeah. Who are we talking about?
So Mr. M.K. Ostwal, he's the chairman.
Okay.
And his two sons, Pankaj and Praveen, who are also directors.
It's a family affair.
It is a family affair, and they have a pretty interesting story.
I'd love to hear it.
So Mr. M.K. Ostwal is described as a first-generation entrepreneur,
Okay.
really strong technical background,
Okay.
and he's got a long track record of success in the industry.
So he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's known for taking, struggling fertilizer units and making them profitable.
He's a turnaround king.
Yeah, and so his sons are actively involved.
That's great.
Yeah, Pankaj is on the commercial side, and Praveen handles the technical stuff.
A good team.
So what I think is really interesting is this family's commitment to this industry.
Yeah, it sounds like they're really passionate about it.
They transformed what was a loss-making unit into one of the most profitable parts of the Ostwal Group.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and then they went and acquired a DAP-NPK plant from Spain.
Really?
And moved it to Madhya Pradesh.
Right.
Which is already contributing to their success.
So they're not afraid to make bold moves.
No, they're not. They're looking for those growth opportunities.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, and you can tell they're in it for the long haul.
That's what you want to see.
They're not just content with, you know, what they've already achieved.
They're always pushing forward.
They're looking to expand and grow the business.
It's exciting.
It is exciting, and it'll be interesting to see what they do next.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the future holds for them.
Okay, so we've got this picture of a family-run business. They've turned things around. They're expanding. They've got impressive financials.
Yeah, it's a great story.
But no company exists in isolation, right?
Right. Every company's got to play in the market.
So how does Krishana Phoschem stack up against the competition?
Yeah, that's the real test. What are their strengths?
What are their secret weapons?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What gives them an edge?
Well, I think one thing is they've really chosen to specialize.
In what way?
Single superphosphate, or SSP.
Oh, okay.
They're laser focused on that.
Right. We were saying they're the second largest SSP manufacturer.
In India.
Yeah.
And with a strong presence in those key agricultural regions.
It's got to give them some clout.
Size definitely matters in this industry.
Okay, so size matters, but there's got to be more to it than just being big.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What else sets them apart?
Well, this is where those competitive advantages come in.
The ones we were talking about.
Exactly, like their low operating expenses. They're running a tight ship.
Exactly. And then you've got high margins, meaning they're making a good profit on each unit of fertilizer.
Okay.
Then you've got those low capital expenditures. They're not constantly having to pour money into new equipment or facilities.
They're being smart with their money.
And all of this translates into a high return on capital employed.
So they're efficient, they're profitable, they're using their resources wisely.
That's the trifecta.
But the investor presentation also mentioned something interesting.
What's that?
Freedom on pricing.
How does that work in the fertilizer industry?
Because, You would think that would be regulated.
You would think so. Yeah.
So the Indian government does regulate pricing for certain types of fertilizers,
Okay.
but complex fertilizers like DAP and NPK,
The ones Krishana Phoschem produces.
exactly, those are not subject to the same price controls.
Oh, so they've got some flexibility.
They have the flexibility to set their own prices based on market conditions.
That's huge.
Yeah, they can respond to changes in supply and demand.
Makes sense.
Factor in raw material costs.
And even adjust based on what their competitors are doing.
Exactly. So that's major advantage.
Especially when demand is high.
They can capture higher profits.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay. I like where this is going.
What are the potential downsides? The risks?
Yeah, because no investment is without risk.
Right. And we were talking about their reliance on government subsidies.
Oh, yeah, those subsidies could change.
Exactly, if the government changes their policies.
Right, and those subsidies are reduced or eliminated.
That could have a big impact on their profitability.
Yeah, especially since they're waiting on like 93.5 crore in receivables.
That's a lot of money riding on those subsidies.
It is.
And then there's the whole issue of global fertilizer prices.
Oh, yeah, those can be volatile.
The cost of raw materials like rock phosphate and sulfur.
It can fluctuate so much.
And that impacts their production costs.
Their bottom line.
And we can't forget about the weather.
Oh, yeah, the wild card.
Agriculture is so dependent on good weather.
A bad monsoon season could really impact crop yields and demand.
Yeah, that's a big risk factor for any fertilizer company.
So it's important to consider all these external factors.
Right alongside their internal strengths.
It's all about understanding the potential rewards and the risks.
So even with a company like Krishana Phoschem that seems to be doing everything right,
You still got to be cautious.
you got to look at the bigger picture.
Informed decisions, that's the key.
Based on the recent performance and their investor presentation,
They seem to be navigating those challenges.
they've got a clear strategy, a strong leadership team.
And they're in a good position in a growing market.
But as always, the future is uncertain.
There are so many variables.
Unforeseen events, global economic shifts.
Climate change, all those things can impact performance.
The fertilizer industry is tied to so many factors.
Just like agriculture itself.
But that's what makes it so interesting.
It's a vital sector for survival.
But it's constantly evolving.
Adapting to new challenges.
And companies like Krishana Phoschem are leading the way
They're shaping the future.
with innovation and strategic thinking.
And a commitment to sustainable growth.
It's inspiring to see.
Absolutely. It gives you hope for the future.
Yeah, it really is incredible to think about, everything that goes into feeding a nation like India.
Oh, it's a massive undertaking for sure.
It really highlights how crucial the fertilizer industry is.
Yeah, and it's not just about producing enough,
Right.
It's also about that soil health, maximizing those crop yields.
Making sure there's enough food.
Exactly enough for everyone.
And that's where companies like Krishana Phoschem are so important.
They're playing a vital role.
It's not just a product, it's like they're helping create this sustainable food system.
100%. And, that brings us to something we haven't really touched on.
What's that?
Their commitment to sustainability.
Oh, yeah. ESG.
Exactly.
Environmental, social, and governance factors.
Those have become so important these days.
Yeah, investors and consumers, everyone wants to support companies that are doing business responsibly.
Right. They want to see a positive impact.
And, the investor presentation didn't go into a ton of detail about their specific ESG initiatives,
Okay.
but their actions kind of speak for themselves.
In what way?
Well, their focus on backward integration,
Right.
securing those long-term agreements for raw materials,
Okay.
the location of their plants.
It all points to sustainability.
Yeah, they're trying to be environmentally conscious,
It makes sense.
especially in an industry like fertilizer production,
Which can have a big impact on the environment.
Yeah, so that focus is crucial.
Absolutely.
So taking a step back, it's clear that Krishana Phoschem is a company on the move.
They're definitely making waves
They've got the performance, the strategy, the leadership.
to really make it in this market.
But like we've been talking about, there are always those external factors,
Oh, yeah, those curveballs.
the things you can't predict.
Like government policies, commodity prices.
That's the weather.
All of that can change things so quickly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
That's a good question.
What should they be thinking about as they maybe explore Krishana Phoschem further?
Okay, so here's a thought-provoking question for everyone.
Okay, I like it.
Given all their momentum, their growth strategy, how do you think this increasing focus on sustainable agriculture will affect their future?
Oh, that's interesting.
And the adoption of new technologies like precision farming.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
It makes you think beyond just the numbers,
exactly. And that's what we're all about here,
getting you to think bigger,
helping you make informed decisions.
whether you're an investor or just someone who's curious about the world.
We want to equip you with the knowledge and the insights to dive deep.
That's it for this deep dive into the world of Krishana Phoschem.
It's been a fascinating journey.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.